Hi. Good afternoon. Welcome. I am Olivier Varenne. I'm the director of exhibition and collection at the Museum of Old and New Art. And I've been working for this museum for the past 10 years. And I'm very happy to be on stage today to make a conversation with you. And so let me introduce you to the precursors of global art, Italian and English, an art collective. They are the originators of the selfies. They have worked for 50 years with filth, side by side. They are living sculptures. Please welcome the best dress of the 50s as voted by The Guardian, Gilbert the Shit, and George the Cunt. Hi. Hello. Welcome, Gilbert, George.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the exhibition you've done for us. It's a fantastic exhibition. It's a triumph. And I want to ask you, in 1973, you came to Australia to present the singing sculpture. Why you waited so long to come back, and why you chose Mona?
Well, that was extraordinary when we were almost unknown baby artists in 1972, and John Calder came to London and asked us if we would present the singing sculpture in Sydney and in Melbourne. We were absolutely amazed. It was an extraordinary opportunity. We took also the two huge charcoal on paper sculptures called the Shrubberies 1 and Shrubberies 2, and it was an experience of a lifetime. We were celebrated nationally with that singing sculptures. It was in all the newspapers and television. It was amazing.
It was quite amusing because John Calder didn't know anything what we were doing. No? So when we arrived there, Joe thought we were in South Africa. We remember that. We didn't realize where we were, and it was we were part of the drinking sculpture period, no? So on the airplane, we were already completely drunk. So we arrived in Sydney completely drunk, and we had a meeting evening completely drunk, and the next day we have to do the singing sculpture the whole day for 8 hours non-stop for I think 1 week, you know. And in the evening we were always going out, completely extraordinary.
Amazing.
Do you use alcohol to influence your work? Do you work under influence?
I think it was very simple because we were, as baby artists, we were socially involved, and a lot of artists all over the world. We used to go in London, Paris, New York. We had artist friends, and we were young, we were celebrating, we were excited, and we realized that the day after, all the artists went back to the studios and did a perfect line or a perfect square. And we thought we should use what is part of life as part of our art. And that's how we invented the drinking sculptures.
Yeah, the teetotal period was over at that time. And so it was quite extraordinary because we were quite a shy art in 1968, 69. And that moment that we managed to sell a big piece, what you call a big artwork, a big drawing piece for £1,000 in 1970. There was so much money. After that, we had to start to use the alcohol to improve it.
Tell me more. Why you choose Mona? What was the reason for you to be in Hobart, Tasmania?
It's quite interesting because after then, they all tried to approach us to do a big show in Australia, but never happened. Sydney and there are two places in Sydney, Melbourne, and some other in
Brisbane even.
Brisbane, we went there even to have a look, but it never happened. So one day you arrived, no? Because you met Cristiano Raimondo in a park or somewhere, no?
As we meet people.
It was a sculpture park. Sculpture park.
You do meet people in the park. You have to choose your park very carefully.
I think it's extraordinary that it all began with the collection of Martino in Monaco. That's how it all came about. Extraordinary.
And the idea was to take the Martino collection to Hobart, no? And we personally didn't like the idea that it was just too small for us and not up to date. And some of the, the dirty works were not included in some way. So he came to see us, no?
Yeah, he came to see you, and here we are.
Here we are.
You often say that you feel suspicious to be in the countryside. You feel lost. So do you feel lost in Hobart?
Well, I think we don't feel like that anymore. But when we started first as baby artists, because we were both from the countryside, when we arrived in London as students, we didn't know how to be modern, urban city artists. We didn't read newspapers. We didn't know how to watch. We didn't have a television set. So we were still in our minds country boys, yeah? We were born during the war, during that very poor period when food was still rationed. And we didn't know how to become modern urban artists. It took us a while. And then we did. I think first of all with the Red Morning pieces with the stuff, and then with the Dirty Words pictures. And then we became completely modern urban artists. And then one day we forgot about the countryside. We forgot that we came from the countryside. And we forgot our dislike of the countryside. And we were invited by a friend to visit him in the north of Devon, in the west of country. And we went down to see him, and we arrived early in the morning, and it was so beautiful. It's a tiny, tiny village with a population of maybe 1,000 people. And we got up so early because it was so quiet. And we walked up through the village high street. We said good morning to the postman, and there were birds swimming over the estuary. It was absolutely idyllic. And you can't imagine, we were completely convinced that we'd been wrong about the countryside, that it was lovely. And as we reached the top of the hill, there was a medieval parish church with all the tombstones and the foxgloves and the flowers. And it seemed even more utopian and collegiate, extraordinary. And outside the church, standing was a young couple. They were probably in their late teens with a pram with a small baby in. And that seemed to make this complete, perfect, bucolic, heavenly place. And we were very moved by our realization that we'd been wrong about the countryside. And we turned to the young couple and said, good morning. And the young man turned to us and said, fuck off, you weird-looking cunts.
After that, we never went up to the mountain.
So London now is the center of your universe.
But now that you have David on top of the mountain, it's completely different. I must admit that. No?
Another example.
Yeah.
So we realized
and we are very impressed by what is going on here, beyond belief. You know that when we had a small show last year in Singapore, and we were not so convinced because we never watched television a little, but we know nothing about the art world. So we thought we would go to have a look and say no.
Thanks.
And then we arrived, and we are so impressed.
The moment
what is going on.
The very moment.
Yeah, the moment, and then we realized that's the best place to make a show, and it is for us one of the best shows we ever made.
Thank you.
London is the center of your work, is where you find all the inspiration.
Not London. East London.
Brick Lane.
Brick Lane.
Can you explain a bit more about your neighborhood and about Brick Lane and how do you...
I mean, you started in 64.
Mid-60s we were there, yes. We were there when most people in I think 65% of the population were tramps and homeless people. There were 3 huge hostels for damaged men and 1 hostel for damaged women even. Because at that time there were still some old people who were damaged by the First World War, elderly people, lots of people damaged by the Second World War and the Korean War, and a huge number of people who were damaged by the laws on sexuality. So at that time it was the practice of the police, if you committed some minor sexual misdemeanor in a provincial town or village, the local police would say, if you're not in town tomorrow morning, we can't charge you. Which meant that that person would have to pack a very small case, not say goodbye to anyone, not explain to his mother, wife, brother, and leave with very few, and of course you become immediately brain damaged, and you're more than likely enough to end up as a tramp or a homeless person. So it was extraordinary, just having these people walking the streets near us. Yeah?
You get all the information from your neighborhood for your work.
And that's very exciting because in some way, all those streets when George took me first to East End of London, because he had already a small studio on top of Wilk Street, and it was 12 Wilk Street, and that's, it felt like what you call being in the 19th century Dickens world, because all the houses are 18th century houses, and it was all this yellow light in the evening, all this tramp walking, all shouting at you. It was amazing atmosphere, and that became for us very creative to feel this different world than other parts of London.
And to feel the whole history of our lifetime and our parents' and grandparents' lifetime all lived out in front of us. The very grand church by Nicholas Hawksmoor at the end of the street was derelict. They were thinking of even demolishing it. Now it's a national landmark. So at the other end of the street was the synagogue for people who'd had to leave Russia and Poland, again, for religious reasons. And that church had been a French Huguenot church before that. Again, people who were kicked out of France for religious reasons. And so we felt the whole history of the 19th and 18th, 20th century was all bubbling around us, the two wars, every part of all the books and learning were all living there at that time.
That's why it was quite interesting, because we felt exercised, because once we left St. Martin's School of Art, nobody wanted to know you. So we were alone in East End of London, and that's how, being part of this atmosphere, we wanted to be artists with nothing, without a studio, without anything. We still wanted to be artists, and that's when we have made the biggest discovery of all our life, the living sculpture, that we didn't have to be anything except ourselves to be art.
We were very lucky that we were too poor not to succeed. Because most of our contemporaries at St. Martin had something to fall back on, yeah? Dad's pig farm or something, yeah? We didn't have that.
How do you find that the work that you're doing from Brick Lane and New East London, speak to the world, speak to the rest of the world?
We feel it is it is like a typical planet Earth place. We've seen generations of immigrants and different groups of people come and go. We're 2 minutes from the financial centre of London. We're 2 minutes from what was the Cockney district, the indigenous people from London. We're surrounded by Bangladeshi people. It's just a huge international boiling pot, mixing pot, extraordinary.
But after, the most important thing, that's when we did the living sculpture at the beginning, that was part of what we call being the tramp, We're being part of the tramp. And for 8 years, we made our art not outside Furness, inside Furness Street House, because we felt we were not able to go outside our house for many years. So all the art for 4 or 5 years is all done inside our house, like cherry blossom, drunken pieces, the dead boards, the dusty corners, all done inside the house.
It was very important from the early times, because we were two people, it was impossible to be normal artists. You couldn't imagine applying for a part-time teaching job at an art school as two people. You couldn't apply for a grant from the Arts Council as two people. So we were already, 67 was the beginning of the end of the sexual discrimination. Yes, it was, the law changed in 67, just as we were leaving. We were partially decriminalized at the same time as we left college. I remember we wanted to do something like a magazine sculpture. We didn't have a gallery that would represent us. We didn't have any way of showing our art. And we thought maybe a magazine sculpture. We did postal sculptures, experimented to find different forms. And so the magazine called Studio International was extremely famous, international, trendy art magazine, agreed that we could do a magazine sculpture. We did George the Count of Gilbert the Shit, which went up first, right?
Yes.
And we did it as a sort of preemptive strike. We thought, they can say what they like about us afterwards, but we said this first.
Okay.
And we only realized the importance of the piece when we went along Oxford Street to the photo shop to collect the prints we taken in the roll of film, yeah? And the young man behind the counter handed us the roll of film and the end prints in the little packet and said that'll be £2.50 and you don't need to come back here again. we knew we'd done something.
And
right?
not only that, even the what you call Studio International, they censored.
They put two little blocks over the
Can you imagine?
anywhere. The trendiest, most progressive magazine censored this.
They censor it. But I think when we discover the Underneath the Arches record, that was a fantastic period.
It was another milestone, really, yes. We were wandering as we did every day through London. We knew London more than any of our contemporaries. We went all over the place. Because we were living in such a dangerous part of London, no other part of London seemed out of bounds. We could walk anywhere.
But how do you feel that the work that you're doing in London speaks to the rest of the world? Do you think it's the question from...
I mean, let's talk about the living sculpture, the singing sculpture, when we went back to the studio, no?
Yeah, we were walking near Euston, and we passed a junk shop which specialised in selling the things that people leave behind when they leave their council flat. So they're all very poor items, just the lampshade, the telephone directory, yeah? And amongst those things, there was a small gramophone record. It said Underneath the Arches, and that somehow or other already identified with this is underneath the arches is where homeless people go to take shelter. Yeah? And we took the record back to the studio in Wilk Street.
And we started to sing along to it, and play to it, and that's when we thought...
The words were amazing. The wits I never sigh for, the castle they can keep. There's only one place that we know, and that is where I sleep. Underneath the arches, I dream my dreams away. Underneath the arches, on cobblestones we lay. Every night you find me, tired out and worn, happy when the daylight comes creeping, heralding the dawn. Sleepy when it's raining, and sleepy when it's fine. La-di-di-di-da-da-da-da. Pavement is my pillow, no matter where we stray. Underneath the arches, I dream my dreams away.
And that art became totally international overnight. That's it.
Because the words and the feelings in the song, everyone could identify with. Not everyone's experienced homelessness, but you can imagine what it's like. You've seen people that are homeless, you know about homelessness.
And then we used to metalize our heads to remove ourselves from the public. And then it became the real sculpture that everybody was looking at us for hours and hours and hours. And we did it all over the place. We did it all over Germany, Italy, America, England, Holland, everywhere. It was extraordinary.
Explain us a bit what is a living sculpture. So that was the singing sculpture, but the living sculpture.
The idea of the living sculpture was one which could speak and put emotions out into the viewer's mind, thoughts and feelings, that didn't discriminate against age. Young people could understand it, old people could understand it. They could see it and feel it in different ways. It was a kind of universal emotional exercise. I remember one of the first times we did not the singing sculpture, but the living sculpture, was when there was an international touring exhibition called When Attitude Becomes Form, which was just our idea. Yeah? And the show went around the world. It was a very famous show with enormous publicity. It was sponsored by Philip Morris cigarettes. Extraordinary. And the idea of the show was that wherever the show landed, a local curator would be invited to add 2 or 3 artists from that city. And we knew who the local curator was chosen was. It was the late Charles Harrison. And we knew that he would choose us. So we were all ready to create something. We didn't know what exactly, but we knew it was enormous opportunity to show in a group show on an international scale with amazing press coverage, and we were absolutely thrilled. And then we found out that he didn't choose us. And we were cast down into an enormous, it's difficult to imagine, as young artists, we were so in a doom-laden, unhappy, depressed way. We thought this is one opportunity. There will never be another group show like this in London.
What would we do?
This chance has passed us by.
What did you do?
And so we thought we can only rescue this with living sculpture. So we gate-crashed the private view, to which, of course, we were not invited, as living sculptures with the multicolored metallized heads and hands. We just stood stock still in the middle of the private view and entirely stole the show. And then, to our amazement, at the end of the evening, a young man came up to us and said his name. It was the name of the most important young art dealer in the world at that time. And he said, I am Conrad Fischer. You do some, sie was me in Düsseldorf. Extraordinary.
And that was the beginning of everything in some way.
Amazing opportunity.
The opportunity was extraordinary. And then he told us, I cannot tell you, so couldn't you leave something behind? So we could leave something behind. And we didn't know exactly where we were going at that time, so we created these amazing drawings, like big environments of drawings, like pubs or the general jungle or walking, viewing, and relaxing. And they were amazingly successful financially at the beginning.
And so you stopped.
And then, because we did this one, walking, viewing, relaxing, and Conrad Fischer sold it the first night for £1,000.
That was an enormous sum of money then, yeah? Extraordinary.
So why did you stop?
I think we stopped probably 5 years later because we realized that the viewers in museums and galleries loved the charcoal. They were called charcoal on paper sculptures. They loved the color. They were stained brown, and they had burnt edges. And they loved the scratch of the charcoal. They loved that it was handmade, that it was by a human hand. And they weren't actually seeing or hearing what we were saying with the art. We wanted to get beyond the material and the form to have a contact with the viewer. We wanted to make a friendship between us and the viewer. We wanted to provide the opportunity for change within the viewer. We didn't want to be admired for the technique or the texture. So we stopped doing them.
So then you passed to photograph.
So that's why we started to do this what's called with photographic image and using the negative. But we didn't know how to make a Rembrandt with the negative, no? So because nobody did it before. So we had to do scatter pieces, no? Putting together maybe 20 pieces there, making a composition of 20 pieces. And you can see some of this one in the big exhibition. There is one from 1971, the one what they call that we are in Regent's Park. No? And so that's how we started. And then again, we started, our life became very successful at that time. So we started to drink a lot. So we thought, my God, now we have to do the drinking pieces. No? And so we started to do all this amazing, like balls or what are they called, all these pieces?
All hysterical and destructivism.
Destructivism,
there are some in Mona.
Explain me a bit about the process, how you work to create this fantastic, huge grid of images.
I think it's always been a great mystery to us. We always do a research first, so we gather images, not of things that we are sure we want or things that we're convinced about. We try to be dead-headed when we do our research. We don't want to
You do the research every day, or do you
Not every day.
We have special periods for that, and special periods for that, and special periods for that.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes. But when we're doing the research or when we're going to the studio to actually physically create the pictures, it's very important that we don't go with ideas or plans, because if we have ideas, they will be ideas that we have in our head already. We want to go to the studio and fall into some new thing or truth that we didn't know about before. So we go to the studio dead-headed, blind, zonked, crazed, and try to find some new, gentle thing to do with humanity?
I mean, it's quite interesting. The first 10 years of the so-called, we used to call them photo pieces at the beginning, and they used to be called sculptures even, because we came after sculpture. We studied sculpture. I went to what you call 3 different art schools, and George went to 2 or 3 as well. Oh. So we never knew how to take a photo of all that stuff, or paint, or George knows how to paint as well, and drawing all the stuff. But when we decided to create this new form of speaking for ourselves, we did it all in the kitchen. And for 10 years, everything, all the big pieces are done in the kitchen. And we used to buy the paper that was 50 by 60.
And they're for the grids.
Huh?
They're for the grids.
That's for the grid. And the grid is based on protecting the artwork, that you can transport it, set it up like a building, like a big modern building of glass. You cannot do a glass building with 1 sheet of glass. It has to be panels.
Now technology allow you to do like huge photograph. Would you move to huge photograph, or you want to keep your grid system?
No, we will never.
No, we like the grid system because it's much easier. It's impossible to transport a very big picture. There are no aeroplanes big enough to transport the triptych, which is this picture. That wouldn't go onto an aeroplane. Yeah? And we like it when we're designing the picture in the first place because there's a limitation to the design. We don't want the line going through the face or across there. So we're not free like a normal artist is with a blank canvas to do anything. There's a slight discipline there, and we like that. A little discipline is always good.
But it is protected, and it's easy to transport. We can make amazing big shows. Huh?
Pragmatic.
Yes, all pragmatic. Yes, we are always been that.
We think it's so true to life. It's like Gilbert said, you can't have a house made of 1 brick, or even a window has panes. Even our life, we don't have 1 life. We have our years, our months, our days, our hours, our minutes. It's very true to life.
Even because they are compositions, There is not one image. There are compositions always. And every time before doing a new group of pictures, we take maybe like these days, we take 10 or 20,000 images.
In your triptych scapegoating from the new series, you use the phrase, crucify a curator. Are you mad? And please, can you explain to us why you want to crucify a curator? And how did you crucify me? And tell us, how did you put this show together, please?
We would like to crucify every single curator. That's for first.
Because present company excluded.
It's very simple, because the curators, they are using our material to make their own art.
We're also... It's very strange, because one of our best friends in the world for so many years is Hans-Ulrich Obrist, who invented the Curator. And it's also very interesting, because for years, when we were walking on our neighbouring brick lane, we would be stopped regularly by young people who just arrived in London who would say, I am concept artist from Bulgaria. Or they would say, I am performance artist from Slovenia. And that went on for years. And then one day, they came with a new message, and that's continued to this day. Now they say, I am curator from Yugoslavia. I am curator from...
Well, and how did you put this exhibition together? So you did the exhibition, you curated the exhibition, you chose the piece. Every time I was going to your studio, you were a very gentleman. You invited me for tea, for champagne, for food. And as soon as we wanted to speak about work, you just showed me the door. It was lovely to see you, Olivier, but let us work.
It's true. That is absolutely true. Because I remember when we had a big show in Paris with Suzanne Paget. She's quite one of these museum directors who want to interfere with the artists in a big way, but we managed to keep her out of it in some... Remember when she came to see the show?
Yes, we'd already arranged everything. We'd made a model of the museum in Paris. There are 2 stories about Paris. And she came to London to see the model, the plan of the exhibition. And we were in the studio, and we could see her about to point to make some change to the model. And we said, "You must have a drink, Dad." So we had and then she had a drink, and we could see the figure going again. I said, "I think it's time for dinner now." So the fun is that
I felt the same way.
The fun is that we arrived in the restaurant, and the very nice waiter passed all the menus around, and then he came back and said, to order the meal, and he said to our lady curator, "What will you have, madam?" And she thrust the menu towards us and said, you decided everything else." But it's true that it's very difficult with curators to get what we want for the public. The curators always want they want for their taste. Like even in Paris, we did design the whole show. She accepted the whole show, the whole arrangement, everything.
Can you explain?
And we said we need some seating, like we do at Mona. We said if people go around a large exhibition, they want to sit and think and look and maybe move along. You can't just walk. And she said, really, we do not like having seating in Paris. It is not the style. And I said, we really think it's so important. She said, please do not. We don't have this. It's a modern museum. You don't need seating. So we persisted, and we sent a letter later on. And then there was meetings and plans. It looked as though we weren't even going to get seating in the exhibition. And then there was a big meeting in Paris, and we went through. She discussed the catalogue and the invitation card, and then she said, and the seating. We have spoken with the designer, we have spoken with the council, and you will be okay. In every room in the shows, there will be a big poof.
Very good.
That's what she said.
I mean, it was...
So you see, we can get our way sometimes.
Explain us, how did you do Mona? Because you've designed everything. You've designed the catalogue, you've designed the posters, you've designed the invitation card.
Everything.
The catalogue is like an artwork.
The little movies.
And the old signs.
The little movies we designed, and we signed 2,800 catalogues, 2,300 posters. We did all the installation. We did, I think, everything.
You did everything. But the catalogue is also a very complex work of art.
Complex.
Yes.
Is it, what do you call it? But I mean, the whole idea to make a total artwork started already in 1980 when we did the first big museum show for Rudi Fuchs, who for us was one of the greatest museum directors, because he let the artists be free to do what they want. He never wanted to interfere. He wanted the artists to do a good show or a bad show. But he was just supporting us in a big way. Fantastic. Even then, we did his first big catalogue. It still is a major catalogue at that time, but nobody did big catalogues.
Your picture speaks about racism, religion, sex, death, about being human. They're large, relentless propaganda. They're almost like mantra. Do you intend to change people with this kind of work? Would you intend to...
We are. Well, we will, and we have.
You just have to... we all know that the world was an entirely different place in 1967 to what it is now, and we believe we've been a small part of that. We believe that we can, through culture, we can make things better. It's only culture that works. If you go onto the street and say Charles Dickens to someone, even if they haven't read a book, something comes into their head from that dead man. If you say Van Gogh, it doesn't matter where you go in the world. Everyone has something from that's the force of culture. We believe in that.
I mean, we had to what you call fight, because at the beginning, we were two men walking the street of London. They all started, queer boy, all the time. So we fought against day and night about that. Then we had the idea of what they call, like to show beautiful people, man, for the first time, instead of having all the museum full of naked ladies. We saw we could change that.
Redress the balance.
And create a balance. Then we started to see what they call all the vicar in our street who was going on television denouncing us for being sad,
sick, sad,
and serious. And we saw after that we have to tackle this whole idea of this man-made God and finish it off once and for all, because we know by now that it's all man-made.
Well, you are often inside your own pictures. Are you considering them as self-portraits, or is it a way to extend the living sculptures?
We believe that all of our pictures are pictures from sculptors. The pictures come out of sculpture. They don't come out of picture making. We weren't trained as picture makers. So unlike an artist or an amateur artist or a child, we didn't start with the full range of colors. We didn't start with an empty pad or an empty... It took us 3 years to find red, and then another 2 years before we found yellow. So they are pictures from sculptors, in fact. That's why they're so different. Yeah.
There are two artists speaking, like a kind of propaganda artist. No? No, so thou shalt do that, thou shalt not do that. No, it's all views, our views in the world, into creating a composition, no, to making a picture. We are quite keen on that. It's not like us, no, it's a vision of Gilbert and George with full of different feelings. No? How do you feel in the world? How do we feel? Are we lonely? Are we unhappy? Are we too much dead? To sex trades or whatever, no?
We knew that we're all living in an amazingly privileged world. Never did so many people visit so many different countries. Information about different countries is more available than ever before. The libraries and technology.
And the museums.
And the museums
are full up all
over the world. More and more museums, yes. More and more people are informed. More and more people are educated in different countries.
We remember at that time, in the 68, 69,
limited life.
All the exhibitions were so empty. When we had a show in the Hayward Gallery, the new art, the new art.
The group show.
The group show. There were so few people. Maybe in 3 months, they had 6,000 people. It was just extraordinarily limited. People didn't know what art meant, and that has changed in a totally fantastic way.
We used to say
everybody knows what art means today, and they all want to be part of it. It is like it's freedom. It's art, creativity is the most important part, because it's creating freedoms that you got. The freedom to make new shoes, the freedom to design a bottle, the freedom to do this, the freedom to do that. It's all art in some way.
Of course, yes.
It's the elaboration of the individual, that we can all get out of bed being more ourselves and more able to find what we can and cannot do. That's a modern idea anyway.
And
200 years ago, an individual was a different idea from what an individual is now. 100 years ago, what a person was is totally different from now.
And being attacked for day and night for 45 years was very important.
We say that the enemy was the most character-building thing for us. Opposition is very good.
They made us.
Yeah.
You find a way to be two people and one artist. First, how did it feel, and what's the secret for love? You're still in love. I can see.
What is the secret?
For the past 2 weeks.
It's a secret.
And it's very, very sweet.
He knows more than us.
It's an enormous strength to be two people.
Yes, can you imagine?
As one artist, yes?
Yes. Can you imagine the lonely artist in the studio? It's horrific.
It removes self-doubt. Every artist doesn't know what to do next. He has to ask, do I put another cow in the corner, or what happens? We can just do it all together and celebrate at the same time. Yes,
And we are still driven because we still want to win. We feel we didn't win yet.
Shall we propose a little interlude?
Interlude, of course.
And you can present
yes, we can do
new
that.
philosophy.
Of course. I think we should just say that we're bringing you something this evening which we've only shown once before in Paris a few weeks ago. Some 5 years ago, it occurred to us that, like we have an art for all, like we have a visual language, we should also perhaps have something which would approach, we can only think of as philosophy, because every village has the policeman and the pub and the whatever, but they don't have a philosopher. Maybe we have books of philosophy in the house, but they very rarely would be consulted. And we wanted to make a philosophy that would be more general, that could deal with if your mother dies, or if you fall down, or if you're happy or sad or hopeful or fearful, something that approaches all aspects of a whole life. And we started to carry little cards with us, and we just jotted them down as we heard them or saw them or felt them or if they occurred to us. And we ended up with, so far it's just approaching 5,000 statements. And yes, it's a philosophy, but it's not in our case, because to make it art for all, it's actually not a philosophy, it's a fuckosophy.
And it took us 50 years to tell them what we feel.
And we'll just read you a brief extract. I think there are two pages. The whole thing would be an hour and a half. So we'll just give a brief extract for the first time from Paris to Hoover. Got, fucked, and fucked.
Fuckerage.
They're fuckers.
Fucking Sussex.
Regimental fucking.
Fucking Chapel.
Wanker fucker.
Fuckers Estate.
Don't fuck up.
Fuckers Wharf.
Onward Christian fuckers.
Fuck a checkpoint.
Really beautiful fucker.
Fuckers Drift.
Unpleasant fucking.
Fucking Decent.
The fuck diaries.
Fuckers Whopping.
Cocky fucker.
Fucking into North Korea.
Country fuckers.
Fucking Special.
Holy fuck.
Fuck the shit out of them.
A couple of fuckers.
Fucked once.
Judge fuck.
Fuckers have feelings too.
Dilly fuck.
Fuck, hooray.
Don't stop fucking.
Fare thee well, fucker.
Not a fucking chance.
Fuck Lodge.
Onward the fuckers.
Fuck you all.
Much fucking.
Fucker beloved.
Cock fuck cunt.
Fucking is good.
We're all fucking fuckers.
Fuckers you.
Just fuck along with it.
Fucking ladies.
All fuckers.
French kiss fuck.
Get fucking ready.
Fucks wood.
What a friend we have in fucker.
Fucking homo fucker.
The fucking days.
Fucking after dark.
Don't fuck me.
Fucking on the 10th estuary.
Timely fuck.
Fucking Middlesex.
It's a fucking fuck up.
Fuck them.
Take it and be fucked.
Fuck a Neutra.
You are fucking right.
Fuck fruit.
Rupert the fucker.
Fucker beyond all.
Boys Brigade fucker.
Fuckridge.
Head fucker.
Fuckers apply within.
The fucker.
Fuck the UDI.
Real bad fucker.
Fucker of feeling.
Pissed lick fucking.
Fuck orthodoxy.
Truly fuckered.
Fucker me loves.
Hot fucking fucker.
Fuck the new.
Metrosexual fucker.
Fucker retired.
All the fuck.
Fashionable fucker.
When you fuck.
Fucking the Christian approach.
Girl fuck.
Fuckers healed.
No fucking good.
Fuck on tap.
Unfuckable, that's what you are.
Fuck wanted.
Some fucking band.
Fucked out.
Highland fuck.
Fucking volunteers wanted.
The late fucker.
Fucking joy.
Ever been fucking fucked?
Fucking 1939 to fucking 1945.
Missed fucked.
Fucking on the out of doors.
I fuck a fucker.
Fucking on radio.
Master fucking.
Fucking under the Romans.
Them's fucked.
Fuckers through the pearly gates.
Perchance to fuck.
Fucking ended.
They're not fucking up to it.
Fuck sexy.
Mothering fucking Sunday.
Fuck pod.
History of fucking.
Fuck familiar.
He got fucked.
Fuck it.
We will fuck you.
Fuck.
Me no fuck.
Fuckers on parade.
Go hug a fucker.
Fucker sucker.
Piss drinker fucking.
Fucker of Tunbridge Wells.
All a fuck up.
Fucking cottaging for beginners.
A fuck's on.
Fucking under Mussolini.
The London fuck season.
What hoy fucker.
During a fuck.
Cromwell. And the fucking question.
Lee fucks.
President fuckable.
Dying fucking.
Lord fuck.
More fuck.
Youth fuckable.
Go fuck them.
Sort fucking.
Low fuckers.
Well fucked.
Book a fuck.
A fuck esquire.
Nosy fucker.
So you fucker.
Mr. Fuckers.
What no fuckers?
All's fucked.
The several deadly fucks.
Young fucker.
Up fucking.
Lady fuck.
Go fuck, young man.
Who's the fucker now?
Deadly fucking.
Go fuck yourselves.
You lucky fuckers.
Now it's fucking over.
I weren't fucked.
The fuck news.
Sweet fucker.
The good fuckers.
Blood fuckers.
A fuck on the ocean waves.
The great fucked.
National fucking championships.
All of you fuck off.
They fucked off.
Be happy fuckers.
His Royal Highness Prince Fuck.
They been fucked.
Master Fucker.
No fucking end.
All the fucks in the world.
You all be fucked.
The first fucked.
Arise fucker.
Ill fucked.
Say fuck.
You up for a fuck?
The last fucker.
Victory fucking.
Why the fuck?
You old fucker.
O come all ye fuckers.
Come young fuckers.
Treasured fucker.
Great British fucking.
The fuckers.
A fucker.
Been fucked.
Dishy fucker.
Hello fuckers.
A fuck in a while.
Go and fuck 'em.
Policeman fuck.
Sealed with a loving fuck.
Ex fucker.
An okay fuck.
Wild fuck.
Anytime fucker.
Go and fuck them.
Just fuck off.
Take home a fucker.
Top fuck meat.
It's a fucking mystery.
No fucking end to it.
Old fuck Grange.
Last fuck.
Metro fucker.
PC fucker.
Honours for fuckers.
Rider fuckers.
Legal fuck.
You'll get fucked up.
We're all fucked.
Ever been fucked?
The last fuck.
Backstreet fucking.
The book of fuck.
Sweet fucking fucker.
Me like fuck.
We are all fuckers.
Long time no fuck.
A fucking winner.
Ghost fucked.
Never stop a fucker.
Real fucker.
Surely fuck.
And God the fucker.
Thank you. Fucking extraordinary.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you. Thank you.
Can you explain a bit more about this incredible list of photography?
I think we would probably make a record of it. Yes, a record would be very good. Better than Muzak. No, we think it'll even make a very beautiful book as well. That you can open at any page, you won't have page numbers.
It was interesting because we did it in Paris, no? And they were full of artists there. They were all sitting there, one after another, like easygoing old hippies and all the stuff that we don't like so much.
Very
and,
French.
Easygoing, and we are never that. We are very stiff. And so we read out this philosophy to them, no? All these artists were alive for the first time. It's amazing, no? Remember they came up to you and said...
They're all shiny. They came out and said, "Can we have your fucking autograph?" Extraordinary. No, I think people feel that in some slight, light way they can throw off some chains.
And we don't even have to invent it because, like in Fournier Street, where we live, we have builders next door, no? The philosophy goes on all the time without us.
It's wonderfully universal. Even if you're walking along the seaside in Portugal, it'll always say "fuck the nuts." It won't be the local word for it, right? Fuck is so international in that way. Extraordinary.
What is good taste to you? David Walsh, on an article in The Guardian, was quoted as the arbiter of good taste.
It's a very complicated arrangement. That recently we decided that good taste is the weapon that people use against people they believe to be the social or intellectual inferiors. And we think that's rather cruel. It's no good laughing at someone because of their curtains or laughing at someone because of their taste in gardening or what kind of pictures they put on the wall. We think it's much more positive and creative to think that there's a whole world of different possibilities that is without limit.
Yeah. Because we never did that. We never did formalistic art. We never did nice shapes. We never did what? Because our art was always, from the beginning, towards a morality, a moral dimension we want to create all the time. So we all left out shapes or colors and all that stuff. The idea was to create a new world that is more open to things without nice shapes. That's why we always feel we are different from other artists, because of that.
We have the forms, but the forms are there to carry the meaning. to take the meaning to the viewer.
We have been accused of doing all kind of dirty, kitschy, too Christian, too that, too naked, and all this stuff.
Not that we think we ever were bad taste in that way. I don't believe we were ever coarse.
But
we have said we always wanted to be the artist the mother wouldn't be ashamed of. It hasn't worked out exactly like that, but... No, we never wanted to be the scruffy anti-establishment artists. We were so poor, we wanted to be respectable and succeed in life. We don't want to be dirty people in a studio with sandals. Yeah?
Can you explain us what is art for all? What is your art for all? Was the concept that you started in the early 70s?
So our greatest invention, I must say, the idea that you can wake up in the morning and sit and think of the world's pain every single day. The struggle, the disaster, the hopelessness, and yet we are all going forward and managing to make something work. I think the complexity of that also lies inside every single person. We all understand it, even if we don't experience it. The subject of the people on this planet Earth is our subject, the complexity of the person.
But we wanted to make an art that people could actually understand. We wanted to make an art that is visually powerful, that when they are in front of it, they can say yes or no. That is a kind of art for everybody, should be able to read our artworks. And we should be able to speak to the public, everybody. That's why we call it art for all. And in some way, we have been able to do that. Our pictures speak all over the place. And we know that because even the lorry drivers, they get it, not George?
I remember a few months ago, a big lorry on our main street was coming down, and he slowed down as he passed, and the wind went down. This great big middle-aged driver said, "Oi, George, my life's a fucking moment. You're asking an attorney." we think that's very funny, but it's also very moving. Yeah?
That's art for all for us. Even every time we walk to dinner every night, because we always do the same things all the time. We get up George gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I get up at 6 o'clock, he has to read because he's always reading for 1 hour, and he has to look after the two tramps that come, knock on the door at 5 o'clock in the morning. They come to knock at the door for a cup of coffee and some money, £2 a day and 45 pence to go to the toilet.
And they're more cheerful than all of the people we know put together. And we find that difficult to understand, but it's a kind of marvel and miracle to us.
And then we go to breakfast every time at 7 o'clock. Then breakfast, read the newspaper a little, then 8 o'clock we are back in the studio. And then we go to lunch at 11 o'clock. Whoever is there, we take to lunch. Doesn't matter who it is, we take them to lunch. And then stop roughly 5 o'clock, then we have to watch heartbeat.
And for some strange reason, we dislike soaps like that intensely. We would never dream of watching them until they repeat them for the 4th time. And then we rather like them. I don't know why that is.
And then at 7 o'clock, we leave the house again. And we are walking to towards Dalston, where we go to a Turkish restaurant, the Mangal 2. And for the last 15 years, when we go out alone, we go there. And when we entertain, we go to 3 other places. And the whole way up, when we walk up, they're all approaching us. They don't know even who we are, but they know that we are a spiritual people in some way. They all want to be photographed. It's extraordinary.
And they're never intrusive. They're always very gentle and very kind. It's very sweet. We like that. We think it's rewarding. It's nice to know that our art is reaching out to people in that way.
Sometimes do you feel that you're too close to the news, too much in the news? Like on the latest series, Scapegoating Picture. It was very, very moving, and the first room in the exhibition, it's so linked with what's happening today in the world.
But it wasn't, because it's 4 years ago when we took the images. It's 4 years ago we took the images,
like this picture,
and we took the image in front of our house. We took the the laughing gas board in front of our house, in our street, and we took the lead, whatever it is, in Brick Lane. nothing to do with new. It's what is happening in front of our house. That's what it is, and that's what we always did that. Even when we did the London pictures, no? All the newspapers in front of our house.
It's very important to be able to deal with life as it is, not to hide away with a still life or a flower arrangement. Eh? It's very good. I think Muslim people should be very happy and privileged that a modern artist is dealing with their world and not ignoring them. It's very good.
For us, they are some of the most powerful images we ever did.
To open the show with this.
And even we thought the Australian will love the Jack Freak ones.
Why?
It went very quiet then, go on.
No,
because we have the freak and the Jack, you know.
So we liked the fact that we lived through the period when Muslim people arrived in our area, and we saw the Yiddish-speaking community leave, yeah, and so we actually experienced it all. We felt we were there when the last tramps died, yes, when you didn't need a hostel anymore. You had drug addicts, but you didn't have any of those tramps anymore. We saw there was a Jewish wine shop on Brick Lane, just a kosher wine shop, and that turned into a Hindi music center, yeah? There used to be a Polish delicatessen for all the immigrants from Poland, and that turned into an adult clothing shop, I think, yeah? Even everything changed hands. Even the men's lavatories on Whitechapel turned into an Indian restaurant. Some young friends were recommending it. We hadn't been there. Some young friends said, you must try it. The food is very good. It's very inexpensive. The beautiful decor and service. And it's eat in or take away. I said, it always was.
David has a question for you.
A question from David.
Yes. Apparently John Caldor gave you an envelope back in 1973 with a ticket to Thailand. And it's very curious to know what happened in Thailand and how did you lose something or did you learn something?
Oh, you mean David? You mean
our first
John
Caldor?
John Caldor
gave us an envelope, a ticket to Thailand. Because he was so happy with our extravagant, drinking session and singing day and night, that he gave us a small holiday in Thailand. He gave us
return tickets home, and we noticed that there was a stopover. And we said, well, what is that, John? He said, that's a little holiday for you, because I'm so pleased with the two exhibitions. And it was a stopover at the Oriental Hotel in Bangkok, which we'd never actually heard of. We were quite well brought up, clean-minded, poor people, yeah? And we went to Thailand for a week, and that's where we lost our innocence. Entirely.
Oh, you know what, yeah.
We were amazed by that, because it was at a time when there was no such negative term as sex tourism. It was a time when the permissive society was a very positive term, free love was a very positive term, and it was an extraordinary time for us, I must say that.
Did it change your work?
It threw off a lot of chains of childhood and background and things. Yes.
We never looked back.
Did it influence your work? Did you change it?
I'm sure in some way, yes, of course. Yes, because we
became more adult.
Yeah. We did the dirty words after the trip to... everything came after that, of course.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And maybe... are you happy to answer some questions from the room?
Of course.
Anything.
Of course. Feel free.
So I think we've got two microphones on each side on both floors. So if anybody has a question, we don't see anything.
Please call out if you have a question.
Yeah.
Maybe the light should go
Yes,
on.
of course.
Yes.
Ask away.
There's a microphone somewhere.
The light, yeah.
Now we can see.
Hello, could I ask about Victoria and how you met Victoria in Monaco?
Good heavens.
And you became...
That's a very personal story. It's very
Gilbert and George and Victoria.
And another great success of our visit to Monaco and our exhibition there, which resulted in the show coming to Hobart, was we were waiting in the foyer of our hotel, the very grand hotel, I've forgotten its name, in Monaco. We were waiting for our assistant, Yui Gang, who was staying at a more modest hotel, to come along to join us, and we would go and find somewhere for lunch. And it was a little embarrassing standing in the foyer, because although the hotel is very grand. The guests are rather sort of seaside, scruffy a bit. So they kept mistaking us for management and asking questions. Could you tell us where the bar is, please? They said. Well, one couple actually thanked us for a very nice stay. And anyway, Yui Gang, our assistant, did turn up a little bit late. It was fantastic, with a very beautiful creature on his arm. And he introduced us to Victoria, a young lady
Victoria.
from half Latvian and half Filipino, who has enormous charm and spends the whole of her life exuding femininity. And she's lived as a young lady for the last 18 months or 2 years, I think. And we're very, very fond of her. And we presented her at the last marathon at the Serpentine Gallery. Every year there's a marathon at the Serpentine Gallery. And this year's subject was transformation. Yeah. So we were able to not to have to discuss it or think about it. We just went and presented our Victoria. And she looks very lovely.
And Yui Gan said to us in Monaco, look what I found for you. Catch of the day.
He's very coarse because he's Chinese. Maybe there's one more question? Or is everyone very happy?
Yes, I think the microphone is over there. Yep. You have to go.
I was fascinated by a comment that you made about going into your studio with a dead head and then looking for what you can do that's new and gentle about humanity. When I was in the museum last night looking at your exhibition, the word gentle did not enter my mind. It's powerful, it's striking, it's provocative. So when you said the word gentle, it really made me rethink how to interpret your art.
Excellent.
I wonder if you can elaborate on your use of the word gentle. In what sense?
Maybe we started out as gentle. Because when you have a look at the first one, the what you call like 72, 73, 74, they are quite gentle. But the new ones are more up to date, more confrontational.
I think we're still very gentle in that we do conventional rectangular pictures, like in every national gallery of the world. So we're not ugly or aggressive in the way some modern art is, where you have a dead elephant and umbrellas on the ceiling or something, yeah? No, we never wanted an art which would alienate 90% of the world's population. In that way, we have flowers, we have human beings, we have people, we have trees.
But we looked like a gentleman. That's quite true, because it's a very powerful idea to have this ordinary suit. We never swear ourselves.
It's like the young lady friend of ours who, when we had the Tate Modern show, took her mother and her grandmother along, expecting them to be quite annoyed or irritated by the two country ladies. And they went all the way through the exhibition. They were very nice. And when they came out, our friends said to the grandmother, so what did you think? And the grandmother said, well, I'm not entirely sure of all of their pictures, dear, but they do dress very nicely.
And that,
so we got away with it.
Tell the other story, the Tate, the little boy in front of a picture.
I do remember that one. Oh, yes, that's very good. We always say it's a question of getting away with it. We never wanted to be the confrontational artist who would put something in front of the viewer to say, do you agree with this? If not, you're stupid. We don't believe in that. We want to be subversive. We want to take it up to that line, but not be offensive. We had a wonderful story from one of the invigilators during the Tate Modern exhibition. And it was the story of a lady with her two small children, little boy and little girl, standing in front of the big picture called Sperm Eaters, this very graphic, these two red and yellow figures spunking out, yeah? And the mother trying to gently drag the children along to the next picture. But the children absolutely fascinated, and the mother realizing she should let them take a proper look, and then very suddenly one of the children said, "Can you do that, Mummy?" And then after a pause, the very sophisticated, educated, charming mother said, Sometimes, darling.
Maybe another question over there.
If I may, I'm fascinated to know about your 10 Commandments, if you wouldn't mind talking through those, or if and how you live by them, if they apply.
I can't hear, sorry.
I'm here.
Try it without the mic. The 10 Commandments, yes?
The 10 Commandments, I'd love to know about them. Could you talk to us about how you came to devise those, if you live by them, how that works?
I think the 10 Commandments from quite a while ago were our way of trying to set up our position in opposition to the habits and ways of the art world, of the traditional way of an artist has to be. The artist is in the studio painting away and they don't care about the rest of the world, and one day someone will knock on the studio. All of those habits and cliches about being an artist, we felt we wanted to leave behind and find our own way.
Yeah.
And that's why we said we want to make a new way. We want to make use of sex in our art. We want to feel that we are giving something back in exchange for the gift of life. We don't believe that we are sent here just to enjoy ourselves. We wanted to say, we don't even know what we're doing always, but we still have to do it.
And we did the Laws of the Sculptors in 1969.
Even
and
earlier.
it's quite extraordinary that we kept to that. It was very naive when we did it, but we kept to every single one of that. And that every piece of writing we ever did, like what you call to be with art is all we ask, nothing has changed from that vision of ours. I don't know why. We had this vision as students, and we never, that was it for us. We saw the light.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other question? Yeah.
Maybe everyone's very happy. Oh, there's another one.
North Devon. Which little town was it?
Try without the mic.
North Devon.
I know Devon, yes.
Which little town was it?
Which one?
Oh, it was Appledore.
I'm just curious because
Appledore near Barnstable.
I know. I study around there, but not the one that I was in.
Oh, very good. Sure. When we arrived at the house of our host and told him what had happened outside the church, he said, "Oh, they can't possibly be locals. They won't be locals."
Any other questions? Yeah. We do one more after, no?
Try without the mic, maybe.
Can I ask you a few questions, and you can choose which ones you'd like to answer?
Good.
When you're creating art, do you ever throw it away because you disagree with each other about the aesthetic value or the moral value? That's question one. Question two, George, what
One
do you
at a time.
So the first one is, do we argue?
Do you ever disagree about the artworks that you create
Yes.
and then throw them away?
We call that the great, we call that the great heterosexual question. And number two?
Apparently you read, George. What do you read?
Don't get it.
What?
You read books, apparently.
Yes.
What do you read? What do you like to read?
It depends what time I'm living in. But for many years, I read adult literature because I suddenly realized that all of the books I'd read as a teenager always began after breakfast on the lawn. And after chapter 1, the next chapter, they're back on the lawn again. You never find out what happened in between. So I went out of my way to read all of the books which filled in that gap. And it was very. I used to get up. I was so amazed by that there was such literature. I used to get up very early in the morning, sit in the front window and read and read and read. One day the vicar said, "It's so nice to see you reading in the window in the mornings." Number three.
Number three is: would you consider yourselves to be humanists?
What?
Or is that sort of too
Again?
passe?
Humanists.
Humanists.
Secularists.
Yes.
You mean?
Existentialists, we would call ourselves.
Thank you. And the final question is, would you hope to be remembered in 50 or 100 years' time for your physical art or for the expressions that you've brought to those who have seen your physical art? The feelings that people would have gained from seeing you as a duopoly of artists?
I'm not sure, but I think what he's asking, do you want to be remembered for your picture or for your living sculpture? Is that correct?
I think we all want to. Everyone wants to speak from the grave, so everyone would love there to be a hereafter.
Now
An artist can live forever, yes.
We want to be remembered as Gilbert and George and the world with all the pictures.
And I think you will be remembered for a long time in Hobart. Thank you so much, Gilbert.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Thank you.
In the middle.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Yeah.